Hi guys, it's Keisha and welcome back to my channel, and if you are new here, welcome to my channel. Now if you don't know, here on my channel I talk all about true solved and unsolved crime involving black people and people of colour, as well as police brutality cases. A lot of these things really aren't spoken about in public media, and I really want to make sure that that content and awareness is out there. So let me give you guys my disclaimer before we get into things. All the information in this video is for educational purposes only. It is all information that I have found on the internet and kind of compiled into one video to give to you guys. I do not mean any disrespect to anybody that I mention in the video unless you are a racist. Today is another police brutality case, and we are going to be speaking about the death of Ricky Bishop. The full circumstances to this death are still unknown to this day. There are no answers, there are just pure questions. This case really does remind me of police brutality in the 60s and the 70s and the 80s, where police didn't need a reason to arrest a black person or beat a black person up. They would just grab any old black person off the street that they saw and give them a hard time. So Ricky was described as a fit, healthy 25-year-old man. He was a volunteer fitness trainer, and that was kind of the work that he pursued. He loved working out, he loved helping other people. He found it super rewarding to be working in a job that just kind of gave and helped other people. Ricky was a beloved son, father and brother, and he had an amazing relationship with his mother Doreen as well as his sister Rhonda.
They can stop and search us, they can kill us at will, and yet there's no justice for them. And our demonstration is to highlight other plight for justice for young black youth. Fear in the black community, fear to come out and to support, fear of the police. Even now, maybe now more so.
On a Thursday afternoon on the 22nd of November 2001, Ricky was driving around with a friend and they began to be followed by the police. Allegedly, the police began to follow the car because they felt that they were driving very erratically and that they weren't driving with an aim. They just seemed to be very pointlessly driving around, and eventually they did pull them over. The police stopped them in a really quiet residential area in Brixton in what they were claiming was a part of the Operation Clean Sweep. So Operation Clean Sweep was purely dedicated to finding wanted people. So they were looking for people wanted by the court, so people that may have not turned up to a court hearing, or somebody that may be a suspect in a crime that they are working on, as well as maybe somebody that had just gone off the grid that they were looking for in question to something. So this is something that the police are always doing, but during this time they did just really want to crack down on trying to find a certain set of people. I mean, I understand the police stopping a car that they think is kind of driving a bit erratically and just want to check on the driver and make sure that everything's cool and okay, but I don't think stopping this particular car actually came under the clean sweep operation at all. Unless the people inside the car or the car itself matched any kind of description or something like that that was involved in some kind of case that they were working on, I don't see how it had any relevance to Operation Clean Sweep. I just think it was a general stop and search. So once the police had stopped them, they had a conversation with both Ricky and his friend, as well as searching them and the car too. No drugs were found on them or the car, and they were reported to be clean. According to the police, both men were detained but not arrested, and they both agreed to come to the station voluntarily. Ricky was seen on the CCTV with his hands handcuffed behind his back as he arrived at the station. So that arises two questions. Why was Ricky being detained and brought to the station? Why did Ricky need to come to the station voluntarily? And why would you put somebody in handcuffs if they are clean and coming with you voluntarily? When arriving at the station, police reported that Ricky told them that he was on drugs. And they also claimed that Ricky's mouth was bulging full of cocaine-filled plastic wrappers. Although that completely contradicts the fact that Ricky was apparently having conversations with the officers while they were being searched, as well as the car. So had his mouth been bulging with all these cocaine-filled wrappers while he had been talking to you earlier? Did you just not notice that his mouth was filled with cocaine wrappers? I don't think so. Would anybody be able to have a conversation with their mouth bulging full of cocaine-filled wrappers? Would anybody really be able to have a sane conversation on that amount of cocaine. It doesn't really make any sense whatsoever. We've barely even gotten into this case yet, and there is already about 50 questions. If Ricky and his friend were potentially this high on that kind of amount of cocaine, would that not be grounds to kind of detain and arrest somebody? Now that sounds like a legitimate reason to me, especially if they were driving as well. So clearly the drugs weren't the reason for detaining them. So it's clear that drugs were not a part of the story prior to this, so I don't understand how drugs can magically come into the equation at a later time. It truly amazes me how many holes and cross wires there can be in a police's story, and it still doesn't matter. So even though, according to police, Ricky was extremely high and taken a very large amount of cocaine, there was no medical attention given to him. So a man comes with you voluntarily to help you with whatever inquiries you're asking about, and clearly is taking a turn for the worse, and you refuse to give any medical attention to him. Ricky was then searched again once he got to the police station, but instead of doing it in the custody suite when you first come into the police station, they took him into an interview room where there were no cameras. The police claim that once they got into the interview room, Ricky began to struggle with them. While struggling and fighting with them, Ricky managed to free himself from the handcuffs behind his back. Officers claim that from this altercation, Ricky was then taken to the hospital, but the reasons for Ricky's admission into the hospital were recorded as unknown. I couldn't confirm whether this was true, but while I was researching the case, I saw something saying that the police did a press conference where they released misinformation about Ricky even before they'd actually spoken to his family, and his family knew anything about this. Later that evening, the police informed Ricky's mother, Doreen, that he was at King's College Hospital and that she would have to make her own way there. Doreen just did exactly what she was told and quickly made her way to the hospital, only to be told on her arrival that unfortunately Ricky had passed away. Now, not getting to the hospital in time is something that I can relate to, and I can tell you now it is one of the most heartbreaking things that can ever happen to you. So unfortunately, Doreen did have to identify her son's body, and while she was doing that, she did notice that there were some unexplained cuts around his mouth, around his wrists, and on his legs as well. So that is basically it for like the core information to the initial story. The whole entire story is basically circumstantial. The only point of view is that of the police. And then there is only a very, very small amount of actual evidence, which is the CCTV footage of him walking into the station handcuffed, which completely contradicts their story. I mean, personally, I think it's a little strange that there wasn't more CCTV. At that point, especially in the months that had just passed, CCTV was becoming widespread because of all the terrorist attacks that were happening around the world at the time. So at this point in the story, there are numerous questions that we're all wondering. What was the actual reason for Ricky being taken to the police station? Why was he handcuffed, especially if he was there voluntarily? Why was he not searched in the custody suite instead of the interview room? How did Ricky get all of these unexplained injuries? Why was there no medical attention given to Ricky at the police station, especially if he had all of these injuries as well as his drug intake? What was the reason for Ricky's hospital admission? Please, somebody, make it make sense. Now, Ricky's family maintained the belief that the officers at the Brixton police station shoved drugs down Ricky's throat to criminalise him and then justify his murder. They were reported to have said, "The truth is Ricky never offered any resistance, yet 4 hours after he was stopped, he was met with a violent death at the hands of the police." Now, while I was researching this case, I don't think I actually mentally put a picture in my head as to what happened, but then to see and hear what his family thought had happened, it was like, whoa, that is dark. But then if you actually think about it, where else could your mind even go with that story? If you think through the story and what actually happened and what was told and the contradictions to that, I mean, it is a pretty rational theory to have. But this theory, if the police did this, then there is no way to justify what they did. It would be just straight up murder. Now, if we move on to the inquest part of the investigation, while I was researching, there was a few different kind of numbers given as to how many police officers were involved. This number ranged between 6 and 12, and it all just seemed to be very inconsistent, and I don't know whether that was just genuine lies and inconsistency between the media and the police, or whether some officers were involved in different parts of the case in general and may not have been involved in the actual death of Ricky. So the names that I did discover of the police officers involved are PC Simon McDaniel, PC Richard Atkins, PC Christopher Rees, PC Michael Lane, PC Daniel Wood, PC Richard Luke, PC Nicholas Wilson, PC Paul Grittins, PC Shane Molyneux, PX Christopher Davis, and PC Mark Johnston. So during this investigation, expert witnesses and pathologists did say that Ricky would have needed to take at least 50 of these plastic cocaine wrappers to even be somewhat high enough to correspond with what the police were saying. Now, realistically, did Ricky have time to take 50 of those plastic cocaine wrappings before the police pulled them over? Because the police officers seemed to feel like they had a pretty normal conversation with Ricky when they first pulled him over. So the only real time that Ricky would have had to take all of this cocaine would be prior to the police pulling him over. Ricky's family believed that the inquest investigation was severely flawed. They said that the Metropolitan Police withheld so much vital evidence and information, and I think that kind of even shows in this video for the lack of evidence I could even show or give you guys. The death of Ricky Bishop seems to be one of the most intense cases that I have researched so far. Like, this just seems to be a very serious and extreme cover-up. Like, the beliefs and theory of the police force-feeding a man drugs just to justify them arresting him and killing him is wild. Like, that is wild. It may be a big statement and it may be wild, but it's not something that I would dismiss. The thing is, I understand racism and I am educated on that, but you just never ever want to believe the police would do something like that. But honestly, the lack of evidence in this case does not give you any room to make any other theories. So the coroner finally concluded that the verdict of Ricky's death was a misadventure, and this verdict completely exonerated the police. So a misadventure basically means a death that was accidental but at the fault of the victim. So a misadventure is often used in drug cases because that person voluntarily took the drugs that killed them. It is supposed to just mean an accidental death, and obviously it's the drug's fault, not the person. But in this case, I think how I explained it suits the situation. So the jury were only given 3 verdicts to choose from: death by misadventure, narrative, or an open verdict. And all 3 of those kind of verdicts are basically not blaming anyone kind of verdicts. So it's not the police's fault and it's not the person's fault. The judge at the inquest ignored the European human rights law and denied that the jury be allowed to use the verdict of manslaughter. None of the officers involved in Ricky's death have been prosecuted or reprimanded in any kind of way and still are allowed to be on active duty in the Metropolitan Police Force. I don't think anybody involved in this case actually felt like Ricky's life was a loss to society. Like, when in fact it should have been investigated thoroughly. Like, I want to know the information of this case in and out. I want to know everything. I really want to know why there is so little information on Ricky's death. Why has it seemed so easy for the police to just get away with this? If this is the theory that the family have come up with, why is that not being taken seriously? It's so dark. Like, I don't understand. Why is there no justice? We need to move to stop police brutality, and I am ready to spend the rest of my life doing that. What an absolutely devastating case. So that is pretty much it for this case. I'm sorry that it was a short one, but I think the fact that it's been a short case just brings up so many questions that we need to be asking. So what do you guys think happened to Ricky? Do you guys know any other information on Ricky Bishop's case that I might have missed and not been able to find? Please just let me know in the comments below what you think actually went on with this case. Make sure you guys are also telling me what other videos you guys want to see from me. I always love to see people's suggestions, and I have so many other videos in the works, so I can't wait to share them all with you guys. Or if you guys ever want to talk about racism or need any advice, I am here to listen and learn. Maybe somebody's called you out for something that you don't quite understand and you want to talk about it. All my socials and links are in the description, as well as other ways of how to support Ricky's family, as well as the Black Lives Matter movement and what you can do for the Black curriculum, and all of that type of stuff is down in the description. So make sure you guys check that out before you go anywhere. And also make sure you guys like and subscribe to my channel, and make sure you turn on those notifications just so you know when my next video is coming out and you do not miss a beat. Other than that, make sure you guys just stay loud, stay proud, and stay educated. Bye guys.